Research and innovation. What are the first images that come to your mind? And more especially, what countries do you think of? Let me take a guess. The United States, Harvard University, UK, Cambridge, even Germany with the Max Planck Institute. But hopefully some of you who are a bit more enlightened are thinking more in terms of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, and the increasing number of research outputs that we are witnessing over the recent number of years. So let me be a bit more realistic. I must admit that Africa as a continent is not yet at the forefront of research and innovation, yet. And this is due to a number of reasons that have culminated over the course of history. That's quite understandable. But tonight I'm not here to go on and on about our history and start feeling sorry for myself as an African. I'm here to do the exact opposite. I'm here to bring you some very exciting news and show you how Africans are rising in the world of research and innovation. So did you know that Africa has, over the last decade, doubled its number of research outputs? I didn't know that until I did the study. And that is leading to Africa becoming more of a knowledge-based economy. So here's something else I bet you didn't know. The World Health Organization, the WHO, and Yale University, in partnership with the United Nations and also Microsoft, have started this initiative called Research for Life. And this, it includes 4 programs. And the aim of these 4 programs is to provide researchers in developing countries with open access to scientific material. And I think a lot of our postgraduate students in South Africa do not realize, the benefits they have in this wonderful country. Some of the researchers up north in the other countries do not even have access to a normal journal, which is essential, you might know, for when you start your thesis or your writing up or your literature review. So they don't have access to that. But Research for Life is changing all of that. So Research for Life was started in 2001, and since then, over 6,000 institutions have benefited, and in over 100 developing countries. So many of the researchers on like I said, on the African continent do not have access to scientific material. And the important thing to note here is this prevents them from conducting their research. So if you don't know whether your idea has been done before or in another country, then how can you conduct your research? And better yet, how do you publish? And this affects our research outputs. So I came across 2 examples. In 2002, in Sudan, there's a certain researcher called Dr. Kalafala who used published scientific material through one of the Research for Life programs called the NARI program. So he actually used this to influence policy in his country, and he actually got it right. So one of his proposals that he developed became policy for the accessibility of medicines. I think that's quite phenomenal. So there was another doctor as well. He was in Ghana, and he actually used some of the programs to incorporate that in his research as well as his teaching. and that benefited a substantial number of students and lecturers. So he was innovative and incorporated those in his lecturing. But now I want to talk to you about the researcher profile. I see there's a lot of students amongst us, and they might not know you might not know what is required from a researcher, an effective researcher and a good researcher. So let me start off by saying a good researcher needs to collaborate. So collaboration is very essential, as well as getting your work cited. So a high citation means that the peers in your field have cited your work. They've read your work and they've cited it. And that counts for you, especially when you want to apply for a rating further on in your career. So you might ask me, but why do you need to collaborate? Collaboration is important because in this way you close the gaps in your research. And to do this, you need to be open-minded, you need to be a team player, and you need to have a critical way of thinking. Another attribute is being ethical and having integrity. This is so important, and I can't stress it enough. So when you start analyzing your own work or gathering data and so on, this is where integrity comes in. Because sometimes the results are not what you have hoped for, and you might feel, tempted to tweak it here and there. That's where integrity comes in. A good researcher also needs to have a long-term goal. I know in some other career paths, it's not the same thing. With researchers, you need to know where are you going to be in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, and in 15 years' time. That's just how it works when you are a researcher. So you need that long-term plan, and you need to stick to the time frames. If you lose focus, if you are not focused in your field, you will lose the battle, and you will fall out. And yeah, I think keeping to your time frames and working towards those time frames is quite key. In my line of work, I work a lot with grants management, and I know that researchers are not financial gurus. But sourcing your own funding and managing your own funding is quite important as well, because this empowers you and it allows you to reach your research goals faster. Partnering with industry is also very important, and I see in my line of work that some people do not yet think in those lines. We are pushed more and more these days to start thinking creatively and innovatively in working with industry partners, because that can mean that you can generate funding from that relationship. You will also, your research will also have more substance, because now you will know what problems industry is sitting with, and then you can base your research around that. But solving real life problems is very essential in research. But now you may ask me, but what makes the African researcher so much different than any other researcher? Like I said, in my line of work, I get to deal with a lot of African researchers, and when I say African researchers, I kind of deviate away from South African researchers. I look more towards the north. So I deal with a lot of researchers from up north, from Egypt, Ghana, Malawi, the DRC. And what I've noticed is that, yes, they do have all the qualities that I just mentioned, but there's a certain amount of modesty about them and a certain amount of empathy towards their fellow human being. They also have this quiet determinism. that I highly value and appreciate. When I look at them, they know exactly what barriers to expect, and they don't give up hope. They work around those barriers because they are focused and their eyes on their goals. They also seek to find solutions to problems in very creative ways. So as children, the African researchers grew up with a passion to make a difference in their communities and improve not only their own quality of life, but the quality of many other lives around the continent. Their research is really selfless. And I guess growing up in a collectivist society contributes to this attribute. I've recently read somewhere that South Africa does not have collectivist societies anymore. We're quite the individualists. So I've spoken to a number of African professors as well when I did this study, and they talk with such passion when it comes to supervision of their students back home. And they say that one's research means little if one does not strive to bring out real change in your community or in your research field. So the idea of adding value to the existing body of knowledge is quite essential, basically with most researchers, irrespective of background. So I've mentioned supervision. And another thing is that when you supervise, it means that you're passing on the torch, and you need that next generation of researchers to then to follow in your footsteps. So that is quite essential. Many of them also feel strongly about influencing policy. I've just mentioned the two examples, and they actually get it right. The researcher collaborates strategically and partner with those academics or industry partners that can offer them some type of resources that they do not have in their existing research environment. So, if you look at the map behind me, can any of you see Africa? It's white, right? So what that means is that African countries, you see South Africa is highlighted because we invest in RDP. RDP is research and development. So the challenge is still there for other African countries to come to the party and start putting their money where their mouths are and invest in research and development. And that, I think, is a main reason why we have the big brain drain. And this is something that we are trying to stop from happening. But there are two sides to the big brain drain. Researchers leaving their countries for fellowships or scholarships abroad in the West opens up so many opportunities for the researcher. With the fellowship comes research funding, which is quite essential, as I mentioned. And then the researcher gets exposed to some of the best facilities around the world, which is essential for the experience and skills. But on the flip side, some never come back. That is quite sad. And the universities abroad gain acknowledgement for their work. They also gain from their research outputs. So again, we lose on the research outputs. But why do I remain hopeful? I remain hopeful because I've also discovered in my interviews that the African students back home do seek and look up to these professors that live abroad. And these professors then again supervise. So, as you can see, these researchers who left their countries still have an influence on the students back home. And that, to me, was quite profound. So the other thing that I also want to mention is that, yes, funding and resources play a huge part, and the researchers, the funders abroad also try to help with the big brain drain, right? In their requirements, they do ask for these scholarship holders and grant holders to come back home. So a lot of these funding programs have it as a requirement for these researchers to come back home, but it does not always play out like that. So I'm at the end of my talk now, and the message that I want to have you leave with is that research and innovation in our continent is growing slowly but surely. However, we need strong leaders in all of those governments and those countries to start waking up and prioritize research and development. Because if you think about it, research and development is where real advancement of any nation lies. Thank you. Okay. Questions?
Hello. So, in the Middle East, the richest countries in the Middle East are the ones that have a lot of natural resources, like oil, etc., etc. And yet, the richest of them all is Israel, and all they have is salt. So, looking at that, do you think that the real solution to South Africa's problems with regards to poverty, etc., will be more research and more patents?
South Africa has a different scenario. We've come a long way, and we have programs in place with the DST and the NRF. Those are the two big bodies who have programs in place where they trying to build human capacity. Okay, so they're trying to develop students to become doctors. So they're driving the PhD thing. So I think that strategy will address some of the poverty issues. But it's not the only solution. I don't think research can address all the problems, but it plays a big part. And that's why I'm here today, to say that the only way that we can evolve and transform is through research and innovation.
Thank you.
Okay.